Hello there everyone, it's Carol again from the Crafty Emporium. So recently on my Facebook group I ran a 5 things challenge. So what I asked the members to do was to list 5 items to challenge me to then make something with it. And so what I did was I went through the list and I chose this lady's selection. Now I'm not going to pronounce her name because I know full well without a shadow of a doubt I'm going to get it wrong. So that was the lady whose suggestion it was, and I do apologise, I just don't know how to pronounce your name and I don't want to pronounce it wrong. And these were the 5 items that she chose. Now what I'm actually going to show you to make with those 5 items is this envelope tag pouch. And so if I open it up you can see that there's the inside of the envelope which makes a pouch, and then on the back I've added a pocket as well, but I've just decorated all the front of the envelope itself. And also in the previous video, which I will put the link in down below, I've shown you how to make a couple of the embellishments that I'm going to be using on this, which was the flowers and the little mini cluster. Used a flower on the back as well. So yeah, let's get down to it. So the 5 items that the lady suggested was sheet music. So I've got this vintage book of sheet music, and I've chosen this one because it's quite tightly packed with music. Sometimes you'll get a music page and it's really quite well spread out, but this one's really nice and compact, so that's going to work well. The next thing was some fabric. So on another video that I've done, I used this self-patterned fabric here, this cotton fabric, so I'm going to use what I've got left of that. So that's the fabric. The next thing was an envelope, so I'm using just a bog standard envelope, and I've already tea dyed this one. Now I'm actually going to add possibly another envelope as well, which you'll see in a little while as to why I'm going to use 2, but in the actual project I'll only use the one. The next thing was a ticket. So I've got some tickets here, so I'm going to show how you can use those. And then she also said about using ink. Now all she said was ink. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use some Cosmic Shimmer Vintage Mist, and this particular colour is tarnished gold. So I'm going to use that one, and I'm also going to use my normal Tim Holtz ink pads, which was Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain, so I'm going to use those as well. So those are the materials that I'm going to use for this project. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the flap of the envelope down. So I'm just going to put some collal glue around the actual flap and then glue it down. And I've also laid down, as you can see, a piece of greaseproof paper because I just want to protect the surface that I'm actually working on. And then on the front part of the envelope, I'm going to lay a stencil on there, because this is what I didn't do on the other envelope. I didn't decorate the background up, and what I'm going to do is, using the glimmer mist, Cosmic Shimmer Mist, I'm going to tap the bottom to make sure that the mica powder that's stuck at the bottom is all mixed in with the liquid here. So if I just tap it, it just loosens the mica powder somewhat. And then I'm going to just spritz the envelope. Oops. Through the stencil. And then I'm going to lay, this is where the other envelope comes into play, I'm going to sit that on top so that I can use up the ink that I've sprayed onto the actual stencil that's sat on top. So I should get a little bit of an imprint on there of the pattern. Can you see that shimmer on there from the actual stencil itself? And in fact, I think I prefer this one. I'm going to use that one as well, I think. So let's just stick that up as well. Yeah, so now I've got two. Get rid of that. Next thing that I want to do is I want to chop off the tag shape that I want to make. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim along this top edge to open up the actual envelope itself. So now I've got access to the inside of the envelope. And then I'm just going to trim the corner off here to make the tag shape. And then with that piece there, I'm going to flip it over so I know that they're the same size, and use that as my guide for cutting that a little bit off. And in fact, I can now use this as my template for this one. So again, I'm just going to chop that little bit off. Then I can sit the two on top of each other, look. And just chop off those angles there. So the next thing I'm going to do is get my piece of fabric, and I want ripped edges here because I want it to fray. So if I just give a little snip at the end and rip, and then I can start to fray the edges a little. Go to the top edge. I should be able to get some more off. And I'm just going to stick that down there on that edge. So get my Fabri-Tac glue. Trim that off to about there. Put some Fabri-Tac on the back of the fabric. And then place that on there. Do the same on this one. I might do this one a little bit shorter. Place some Fabri-Tac on the back of there. So then I'm going to get my vintage music paper. And just rip off a thin strip. I need to rip that edge off too. Now I like doing it by hand like this because it just opens up the fibres of the edge of the paper a little bit more, which makes it that little bit more absorbent for the ink when you distress it. So just lay down my mat. I'm just going to ink the edges up a little, just to give them a little bit more definition. So I'm doing small circular movements down the actual page. It just helps to colour up the page a little bit more, make it look even more vintage. So that was with the vintage photo, and then with the walnut stain I'll just come in and just sort of zigzag backwards and forwards, and it just helps to curl the edge of that paper up a little, and also where the paper has become fibrous, where it's been ripped, it just picks up a hint of the colour and gives it a slightly finer defined line down that ripped edge. And then if I just rip it across the top, and then I'm going to just overlap that over there, rip that bottom bit off so it's the right height. Yeah, stick that on. So that will then sit on there, and then I'll add this piece on too. I want to punch a hole in the top to be able to add some seam binding or lace as you would normally with the tag, but this paper is so thin that what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut a strip of coffee dyed paper, well, card actually, not paper, and just chop it down a little so that I can fold it in half. And do another piece too for the other one. Chop a little bit off and fold it in half. And then put some glue on. And hook that folded piece of card over the top in the centre there. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll ink this one up so that you can see the difference between the inking and not inking. Because obviously the inked one will stand out a little bit more than the non-inked one. Again, just hook that over the top. So you can see the difference between the inked and the non-inked. Excuse me. And then poke a hole. So now I need to ink them up. Excuse me. And I'm going to use my vintage photo for this one. So I'm just going to ink up all around the edge. I'm wiping it off to the side here because I just want to take a little bit of the excess off. And then what I have deposited down there, I can then pick up later on, like I'm doing now. And don't forget to do the back as well. The next thing that I want to do is I want to just use my pokey tool, because I want the edges of this fabric to be slightly more frayed. So if I pick up an end here and just flick it out, I can pull it down. Now, because of the glue that's underneath there, it means that I might only be able to take that frayed edge down so far. Can you see it's stopping here? That's probably because there's some glue there, which is just preventing it from fraying that far. But it now means that I can leave some of these loose edges hanging out, and then I'll do some from the bottom as well. So if you have a look at this one, you can just see there's loads of little frayed threads just hanging on the edge there. So I'll probably do a bit more of that later on. So on the back now, I just want to add a pocket on the back, and so I'm going to use up the rest of this sheet of music paper. So if I just gauge where I want to rip it. And in fact, I just want to pinch out some of these slightly more pronounced edges. I'm making it worse. Yes, I want to take out some of those slightly more pronounced edges. That didn't work, did it? Right, through that bottom edge off there. Yeah, that's rubbish now. So I just want to ink the edge of that up. I'll do the other one later on. Oh dear. So I need to be slightly more careful with this because it's vintage paper. It's much thinner, and it could have a tendency to tear. And so I just want to be really careful about how I'm putting the ink on. So I don't want to press down too hard in case I rip it. So again, I'm going around with the vintage photo first. And because it's got that ripped edge, I'm going to go around with some walnut stain. And again, just swipe it in and out. So just the edges are picking up the ink. And I'm not worried about it curling over like it did there, because it'll just add a little bit more of a textural effect on the actual page itself when we come to glue it down. Soften out that edge a little. And then I can place glue around the 3 sides. So I'll do 3 straightish lines and then try and fill in the gaps where it's all a bit higgledy-piggledy. And then I'll stick that on the back there. So that's now formed that little bit of a pocket in there. So now I want to fill up the space a little with some extra little bits and pieces. Now one of the things that was asked for on this list was some tickets, and so I've got these blank tickets here, so I'm just going to rip off four of them. I'm going to get my greaseproof paper out again, and I've got my little bottle of coffee spray, and I'm just going to very slowly depress the spray because I want it to form droplets on there rather than, you know, just a complete spray to cover it. And then with a piece of kitchen towel, just mop up some of that excess. And then I can put those to one side and just let them dry a little before I come to use them. But at least now they're kind of ready, and I'll probably ink them up as well. So I've got some things here that I got from AliExpress, which I want to use on here as well. And this one was like a library card, but it's a sticky note, so it's only actually sticky across the top edge. So I'm going to have to glue the whole sheet down. So if I get 2, and if I place that one across there, and then this one on there, because now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly place stuff in place so I can see if I like the composition of it all. So this one has got all sorts of different tags and tickets in it. In fact, would that work? It's maybe a bit bright. Have a look through, see what we've got. Maybe add a yellow one. Then I could add some yellow flowers to that. I like the slightly more vintage look about it, so I'm going to use those. Just want to ink the edges up a little just to age them a touch, and it'll just dull down those bright colours on this particular one a little bit. And then there's a hole at the top, punched hole, though not a very good punched hole. So we could put that one on there. Put that one there. I think I might leave those. See see about these flowers. So I've got these yellow flowers here which would tie in then with the yellow of the ticket. And this tall one. So you see, just manoeuvring them round just helps you to get a better idea of what it'll look like. I think I want something different to that. Let's have a look at that one. That's a bit better. And then in the previous video, we made some embellishments to include. So I'm going to use 2 of these flowers. Oh, look which one's better. And also some of the little pre-done clusters. So I could add that one on there and then add the flower on top of that. So you can begin to get an idea of the arrangement of it. And now we can start to stick it in place. What I am going to do just before that is I'm going to add some baker's twine. Couldn't think of the word. To these little mini tags. And again, it will just add that bit more textural element to the front of this. So that will sit under there. So now I'm going to stick all those layers down onto here. So I'm not going to show you how I'm going to stick them down. Gluing's gluing, isn't it? But you get the idea of you need to arrange your composition before you actually put them in place, and then note what order they need to go in. So it's that little sticky note, then the flowers, then the tag, then the mini clusters, and then the paper flower on top of that. So I'll come back in a moment and I'll show you what they look like when I've done that bit. Hokey cokey piggity pokey. I've glued everything in place, so that's how they look like now. And then on the back of this one, this was the only one that I'd got the music paper for, I've just put a label on the back and another one of the flowers. So the only thing really that's left to do now is I'll add some lace to the tag part. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to cut myself a small piece off and then just poke one part of it, or one end of it, through the hole, because it's quite a bulky lace, this. So I'm just going to poke that through there, splay it open a little, and where's my stapler? It is. I'm just going to staple that in place, and then with some baker's twine, I'm just going to slip it around the lace and tie it up so that it gathers the lace together. I'll do that twice, I think. Then I can just trim off some of that excess lace there. trim off some of that excess there. So that's that one pretty much done. Now on this one, I felt that this space up here was a little bit too empty, and it just needed that space filling up a bit. So again, from the same tablecloth that I own, I've just cut out some little pieces, and then I'm going to put some Tombow glue on the back. And just fill up that space a little. So these could, if you don't decorate the back up, you could just stick it onto a page, or do another knot. Or at least if you decorate the back up, then you've got an individual piece that you can lift up and off the page. Maybe put it behind a belly band or tuck it inside of a pocket. So let's have a look. So those are the 3 that I created using the list of 5 things. So we used the sheet music, we used some fabric, used an envelope, used a ticket, and used some ink. Oh, that's what I didn't add. I'm saying I'm done. I didn't add these tickets, did I? Mind you, they're not dry yet. But I could cut one of those out. Let's just see if I can do it. I've got these tickets on, but it'd be nice to add one of those as well. So I could maybe just tuck that behind or behind there. Just add an extra ticket on there. Yeah, so I could tuck that in there. Might do the same on that one actually. But as I said, they're just not quite dry. And I do want to ink the edges of them up a little. Might do half of one on there. Tuck that in there. So that's how they turned out. So I hope you enjoyed that, and that you'll have a go at maybe making some of your own tag envelope pockets, I suppose they're called. And thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you all again very soon. Bye for now.